The sun had barely crawled over the ridge of the Wyoming hills when Luke Harrelson stepped out of his cabin. Coffee steaming in his hand, ready to start a day he expected to be no different from the last 1,000 feed the horses. Check the fences, work the land, keep his head down. That was his rhythm after losing his wife and the child they never got to meet. Quiet, predictable, safe. But that morning, the wind carried something strange, an uneasy stillness that made the hairs rise on his neck. He walked toward the barn and pushed the heavy door open, expecting to find Dusty and Marlowe kicking around the hay. Instead, he froze. A little girl, no more than 5 years old, huddled in the shadows, clutching a worn blanket, her tiny shoulders shaking. Her bare feet were covered in mud. Her dark hair was tangled. Her eyes, wide and terrified, locked onto his. The coffee cup slipped from his hand and shattered on the barn floor. "Sweetheart," Luke whispered, afraid any sudden movement might send her running. "What are you doing in here?" She didn't answer. Instead, she lifted one trembling finger toward the open barn door, and in the smallest, broken voice he'd ever heard, she whispered, "Mama's dying outside." His heart stopped. "Where?" The girl pointed again, her lower lip trembling. Luke didn't hesitate. He tore out of the barn, boots pounding against the earth, scanning the tree line. There near the fence, something lay crumpled in the grass. A woman. His chest tightened as he ran toward her, dropping to his knees beside her. She was young, maybe mid-20s, with long braids and a face pale from exhaustion. Her breathing was shallow, her skin burning with fever. Her wrists were bruised as though she'd been bound. Luke pressed 2 fingers to her neck. Weak pulse, too weak. She needed help, fast, but the nearest doctor was 20 miles away, and his truck had been acting up for days. Behind him, the little girl had followed silently, blanket dragging along the dirt. She stood over her mother's body, shaking so hard Luke feared she might collapse. "Did someone hurt your mama?" he asked softly. Her head bobbed in the tiniest nod. Luke's jaw clenched. "Are they coming back?" Her whisper barely rode the wind. They said they would. Every instinct in him ignited fear, anger, protectiveness, old pieces of himself he thought had died the day he buried his wife. He looked toward the hills, the open road, the empty distance. If someone hurt this woman and child, they couldn't be far. "All right," he murmured. "We're getting your mama inside. What's your name, sweetheart?" "Lila," she said, clutching her blanket tighter. "Lila, I'm Luke. I ain't gonna hurt you. I'm gonna help your mama, all right?" Her eyes, big, brown, desperate, searched his face. Whatever she saw in him made her nod. He carefully lifted the woman into his arms. She weighed almost nothing. Lila followed closely, tiny footsteps quick and nervous. Inside the cabin, Luke laid the woman on the couch and grabbed water, blankets, herbs, anything he remembered from his wife's old medical books. He cooled the fever with compresses, cleaned the wounds, bandaged her wrists. Lila sat beside her mother, stroking her hair and singing softly in a language Luke didn't recognize. Hours passed. The woman drifted in and out of sleep, mumbling fragments of words, ran. "Night, men. Guns." Lila stayed silent except to whisper once, "Please don't let them take us. Please." Luke knelt in front of her. "Ain't nobody talking you. Not while you're under my roof." She reached out suddenly and wrapped her little arms around his neck. The unexpected trust nearly knocked him flat. He swallowed hard, patting her back. "You're safe here, little one." When night fell, he put Lila to bed in his spare room. She wouldn't sleep unless he left the door open. Around midnight, the woman woke fully for the first time. Her voice was raspy when she whispered, "Where am I?" "My ranch," Luke said gently, handing her a cup of water. "My name's Luke Harrelson." Your little girl found my barn. Tears welled in her eyes. Layla, is she safe? Safe and sleep in. Relief broke across her face. She sagged back into the pillow. After a long pause, she whispered, "My name is Mara." He studied the bruises again. "Mara, who did this to you?" She stared at the ceiling, voice trembling. "Men my husband owed money to. Dangerous men. They came to our house last night. I ran with Lila. We hid in the forest until we saw the smoke from your chimney." Luke's fists tightened. "Did they follow you?" I don't know." He stood and peered out every window, scanning the darkness. Only the whisper of wind. But he had been hunted before. He knew silence didn't mean safety. The next morning, while Mara slept, Lila followed Luke everywhere feeding chickens, checking the water troughs, brushing the horses. At one point, she tugged his sleeve. "Mama says cowboys are heroes," she said. Luke chuckled softly. "I know, hero. You saved us." The words hit him harder than a bullet. He opened his mouth to argue, but then he saw the way she looked at him. Like a lifeline. Like hope. And something inside him, something locked away for years, began to stir. At noon, Mara tried to stand, but nearly collapsed. Luke caught her, guiding her gently back to the couch. "You're still healing?" he said. She met his gaze. "I don't know how to thank you. Don't need thanks." She hesitated. Why are you alone out here?" He stiffened. "Lost my family." She touched his hand lightly. "I'm sorry." That night, as they ate soup at the small wooden table, a sound shattered the calm engines, multiple, coming up the dirt road. Luke's blood froze. Mara grabbed Lila, terror flooding her face. Luke grabbed his rifle off the wall and slipped to the window. 3 trucks. Headlights off. Moving slow. Too slow. "They found us," Mara whispered. Luke's voice dropped into something cold, protective, lethal. "Get into the cellar. Both of you. Luke, go." Mara lifted Lila and hurried toward the back. Luke stepped onto the porch, rifle raised. The truck stopped 50 feet from the cabin. 4 men climbed out. One stepped forward with a smirk. "Evening, cowboy. We're looking for a woman and a kid. They ran off with something that ain't theirs." "Ain't nobody here but me," Luke said. "Turn around." The man laughed. "See, I don't believe that." Luke cocked the rifle. "Ain't asking you to believe it." The man's smirk faded. "Move, cowboy. Not a chance." The leader lifted his hand, signaling his men to spread out. Luke took a breath. He didn't want bloodshed, but he would die before letting those men touch that woman or child. A shadow moved behind one of the trucks, then a shot rang out. Luke dove behind a post as a bullet exploded the wood above his head. "Bring me the girl," the leader shouted. More gunfire. Luke fired back, hitting a man's shoulder and sending him screaming. Another tried to flank him, but Luke swung around the porch beam and took him down with a clean shot to the leg. Then silence. Only the wind. Only the breathing of injured men. The leader cursed and jumped into his truck. "This ain't over, cowboy," he roared as the engine kicked up dust and sped away. The other men scrambled after him, bleeding and yelling. Luke stayed frozen until the last engine disappeared down the road. Only then did he lower his rifle, breath shaking out of him. When he opened the cellar door, Lila leaped into his arms, sobbing. Mara stood behind her, trembling but alive. "You're safe," Luke whispered, hugging Lila tight. "You're both safe." Mara stepped closer, tears glistening in her eyes. "You risked your life for us." He brushed dirt from his face. "I wasn't about to let anyone take you." In the days that followed, the sheriff arrived, arrested the injured men, and put out warrants for the rest of the gang. Mara's fever broke. Her strength returned. Lila laughed again. And somewhere in the small cabin, between shared meals and quiet conversations, something new began to grow fragile, warm, unexpected. One evening, Lila tugged Luke's sleeve again. "Are we your family now?" Luke looked at her, at Mara, at the home that suddenly didn't feel so empty. He knelt and brushed a curl behind her ear. "If you want to be," he whispered. Lila beamed. Mara reached for his hand. "We already are," she said softly. And for the first time in years, Luke felt the ache in his chest loosen, replaced with something he thought he'd never feel again: hope.